Welcome to Pop Culture Problems, where we talk about anything under the sun pop culture related, whether that be movies, TVs, comic books, video games. I mean, the list goes on. And I'm John Oderman, your co-host. I'm here with the other host of the show. I feel like I'm sitting across from one of the most famous people in the history of the world, and he's just shaved his mustache. Josh Nichols, who could be the third Mario brother.
The third Mario brother?
Yes.
I could see that. For a second there, I'm like, okay, you're going to say a name and I'm going to be totally off base. I'm not going to agree with it. But I can see the third Mario brother.
Yeah, you shaved your mustache. You just don't have the Italian... you don't look like... You've shaved it so you don't look like the greasy Italian plumber that you are.
I have had a mustache once in my life. And I grew a little goatee, a little bit more facial hair to hide the fact that it was a mustache until I shaved off the lower portion to create the mustache for a play that lasted one weekend only. And I only had it for that one weekend because I am disgusting with a mustache.
and the thing is people that know Josh think it's a little weird, but I think it's a little fitting now that I've made that connection of the third Mario brother that you're always walking around in pink overalls.
In pink overalls.
Yes.
I for a second I'm thinking back. I'm like,
overalls that you wear every day.
That? I was like, when did I do that? I actually had a moment of pause where I considered the fact that it likely happened.
Because Wario has the yellow ones, Waluigi has the purple ones, and you wear pink ones all the time.
I've
always thought it was a little out of place, but now that I've put my finger on it,
actually, I would say they're a light reddish, not a pink, and that's
salmon.
And that's only because it's basically an entire white bib overall set that I've just spilled sauce on because I take the pasta eating portion of my Italian heritage really seriously. Yes. I don't think I have Italian in me. I'm half German, but I was always
do that Ancestry.com thing.
Where
you send in your blood and they give you the DNA and.
And they're like, would you mind just one of your kidneys? We won't sell it, we promise. I know those internet phishing scams.
What do you think your Mario Brothers name would be?
Jario, because my name starts with a J. Duh.
All right. Gotcha.
Well, the thing I never understood about the Mario Brothers. Not Mario Brothers, but you had this stereotype. With any sort of culture, ethnicity, you kind of got these stereotypes and Italian food, lasagna, pasta, all those things. It kind of goes along with this Italian thing. And most of them have mustaches. But I just think that kind of eating lifestyle is not conducive to having a mustache.
That's true.
Because there's so much sauce.
Well, it's the flavor saver.
That's disgusting. That is vile.
I didn't mean it in like a vile way. I mean, sometimes stuff gets caught in there and it's left over for later.
Well, I know, but it's just...
I know. I shouldn't have said that. I apologize.
Here's the thing, John. What I'm interested in is the Mario Brothers had such an impact on individuals, pop culture, little boy John, little boy Josh. Was it Mario Brothers like your first game, or was there something before it?
No, Mario Brothers wasn't my first game. I remember it being there. Like when I was really young, my older brothers were always playing the Nintendo, and it was like kind of like a joy when you'd be able to do that. And the game that we used to always play because it didn't matter because of the Konami code was Contra.
Okay.
So they'd give one of us the controller and the other one, and then the older brother would basically win the game, and we'd be dying the whole time.
Gotcha.
And it's up, down, A, B, select, start for 30 lives in Contra.
Excuse me, where was spoiler alert? There's some people out there that are offended.
Up, down, left, right, A, B.
I can't hear you.
No, that was like that was the code.
They used that in so many
permeated
games.
pop culture as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's everywhere.
Absolutely. I remember Mario was one of my first memories of enjoying a game, but I do recall playing an Atari game first. I remember going over to someone's house and they had Ghostbusters on Atari. Yeah. And I remember not being able to even move with that stupid stick. I don't know if their stick was broke, but it was so hard to use. And with Mario, though, I remember that being the first game, and I remember that I think it was my mom that was playing it, and she jumped over the spoiler alert. the first dungeon, World 1-2, you're in the dungeon and you jump over the wall and you go to the warp zone.
Yep.
And I remember waiting for the time to run out. She died waiting for the time to run out. She didn't know you could go down a pipe.
Yeah.
It was just like, okay, well, now what do you do? Well, this is stupid. This is a dumb game. And like, I remember that. And for me, I think that's what started my enjoyment of watching games. I can play games, but I think I almost like watching people play games in a way more.
Yeah. And you know, I've always been a huge video game guy like my entire life. And I was, I don't want to be like kind of like have a big head here, but I was kind of gifted. Like I could pick up a game and really master the controls quickly to the point where like I was like the person that would be like called up to like beat a level if somebody couldn't beat something. And so like I'm being asked by my friends like, hey, you know, I can't beat this level. Can you come over and help me out? So I became like known as like the guy that like could do that. And it was kind of gratifying, but it was also kind of frustrating because it's like, do you really like me for me? Or do you like me for my video game skills?
For my Nintendo. You love me for my Nintendo. John, I love you because of your big head. You have such an enormous head that it makes mine look a little smaller.
I almost look like Pac-Man, and Pac-Man had legs.
Pew, 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 pew. Blink, blink. That's kind of the sound.
Yeah.
That's my Pac-Man impersonation. I think I'm going on tour and being like an impersonator of just video game sounds.
Yeah.
Except not really good. Not like Police Academy good. Like where that guy was like
that guy. Where's he at?
I saw him on an interview. Or you'll have to look this up online. He was on an interview, and there was some band on there, and they were talking about their latest album or something like that. And then he goes and whips out doing a song with his mouth. The guitar,
that's
bass,
incredible.
Percussion. He did all of it with his mouth individually, and I was like the band singing. They're like, "Well, that's our career over." Like he just replaced us with his mouth.
Yes.
Like he's brilliant. You know, this is kind of, it's not really related exactly to the you know, our nostalgia video games so much as it is about that need to fulfill knowledge within yourself when you need to know something. And we're in this age of immediacy. Like we're like, I wonder what the height of Jeff Goldblum is.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder if he's ever picked his nose in the car. Like you can look that stuff up and it's all listed there. Like, 3 times picked his nose by this stop sign. I don't know if that's legitimate, but we can find it as height. There was a game that I played when I was a little kid, and I remember you were this like guy, and you were running around, and it was like the forest, and there was these little like, it looked like dinosaur triceratop creatures that you'd hop on, and I tried to find out what the heck this game was forever. Like this has been like decades, like 20 years. I'm like, what was that game? I'd search for it. Little guy, dinosaurs, NES, nothing. Couldn't find it. I recently, this is a year and a half ago now, I was over at a friend's house for New Year's Eve. And he's like, well, I've got all these old games on these Nintendo games. Yeah. Let's play some. He pops in a game, and it is this game that I have been racking my brain over.
What was it?
It was called Hudson's Adventure Island.
Yes.
And I was never so excited in my life to just... Because, again, even with the powers of the internet, I was unable to figure out a Google algorithm stringed search to come up with what the heck this game was called. And it revealed itself to me. It was one of the most satisfying things that has ever happened in my life. Just learning the name to that game.
I mean... And
it's an itch you can't scratch.
Well, and so why was that game so burned into your memory?
Well, I think, that was actually a game that I had rented.
Okay.
It was one of the few games that I
remember that.
Oh yeah, that was renting games.
Renting video games.
Well, and now I mean they have like GameFly and some of those services like that. And I actually had one of those for a little while. I found myself as I got more into the adulting aspect of my life where I didn't have time to necessarily commit to that, and I felt like I was paying the monthly fee for nothing. Which really, you're getting games that would cost you $60 and you're paying $10. So it's not that bad. But I think Redbox is taking off with games because you can rent it for a couple nights for a couple bucks. So,
but it's that's just not the same though.
No, it's not
like
the same.
I remember going into like the video store or wherever it was, or the gas station, whatever it was that you were renting the game from, and it was like you'd get excited about like the game that wasn't there the last time, but it was in this time, and you really wanted to play it.
Going into a video store like for a new movie in the new release section, where they had like 5 copies, and you'd go over, and it depended on the store. Some of them had a little laminate with the picture, and they had a DVD in front. Some of them had the case and then a thing behind it, and you would go there, and if it was there, it was like tap dancing on the slain body of your enemies.
Yes,
like you were victorious in battle. Like you got there,
you got there just in time.
Movie. Or like
and then you grabbed it, and there's like somebody sobbing right beside you.
And here's the thing, and you would laugh. Talk about just dancing on the corpses. I mean, you would just belittle them and say. I remember being sneaky. I was a super sneaky guy. Uh-huh. I'd oftentimes, if they didn't have a movie sitting up there, I'd go up to the counter. I'd be like, "Hi, has anybody returned this copy recently?" And they'd go through the little Dropbox crate, and they'd be like, "Whoa, herder, sir!" And you'd hear 2 or 3 people go, "Oh, like he got the last copy." Oh no,
it just returned.
Why? Why didn't I ask? And so I'd get that. So, do you remember a specific game that you rented or rented over and over and over again?
And I actually I look back, I think back, and I kind of feel bad for my brother Jacob because my mom and dad were very specific that when we were younger that you get 2-player games. But the games I really liked were the Zelda games and things like that, where there was no 2-player option. They're just those RPG adventure games. And
you don't want the even option of sharing.
No, it had nothing to do with sharing. It was those were the best games.
Yeah.
And one that I remember renting over and over and over again was the Spider-Man Maximum Carnage on the Super Nintendo with the red cartridge.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it was because it was the red cartridge. I just really liked that game, but that was the one that I went back to time and time again. But the one that Jacob and I both loved, that was a 1-player game that we would be disappointed every time we went to the store and it wasn't there. There was a G.I. Joe game, G.I. Joe Atlantis Factor.
Oh, okay.
And if you have not played that game, you need to emulate it, do something, because I don't think it's on any virtual consoles or anything like that. But it was such a phenomenal game, especially for a couple G.I. Joe geeks like we were. We grew up playing with those action figures, and when we found that game, you could play as Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes, and all these other characters you could unlock. And it was so fantastic. And to this day, if I have an opportunity to play that game, I'll sit down and play it.
Well, I think there's certain games that it's almost like movies. And I remember back in the day when there was TV, and you would actually watch it at the time it was scheduled and things like that. A movie would pop on and you'd have to watch it. You're just gotta watch it.
I don't know when this is going to be on again.
Yeah, I don't. This is the only time it's going to happen. And so you'd get into that kind of zone. And I think that it was similar with video games. You would play it for the nostalgia reasons. Now, for me, I recall renting games when they were on NES, and then again when they were on PlayStation 1 and 2. More so 2.
Okay.
I had a gap in renting because a grandparent had a system or a friend had a system, so I didn't need to necessarily rent. I would go to people's houses and I would play. But I remember there was really only one game on NES that I ever rented because we had a few, we had Mario and you had Duck Hunt and you kind of have the games there. You don't need a lot more. But I remember renting one game and I just sucked at it. And I remember renting it again because I was like, I've got to not suck.
It can't be that bad.
Yeah, I can't be that bad. I think I rented it maybe 2 or 3 times at least. Burger Time.
Yes, that is, and it is a hard game. It's not easy.
Think I may, and this is a stretch, beat level 2. I might have beat level 2. I can't even be certain of that. That is a hard game.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was
they don't
a
give
fabulous
you nearly
concept.
enough salt shakers.
Oh no. But it was a great concept.
It
Like,
was,
I
absolutely.
loved it, but
Yeah.
it was just too hard. They had too many enemies. Their patterns were erratic. And
They
and
were
it just
like
didn't-
there was no pattern. They just did whatever they wanted. Those sausages, those eggs, whatever they were. I mean, like, and I think that's something that is kind of lost in today's video games is the difficulty level.
Yeah.
I almost think
absolutely.
like even like hard mode is easy. And there were games like back when we were kids that they were just hard.
Yeah. Oh,
And there was the added element of you don't know when your system's going to stop working, so you have to try to do it fast.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, and I think I read an article recently where they said like blowing on the cartridge was like the worst thing because you're getting like spit inside of the electronic.
Yeah.
But you'd be like,
oh, hey, you know what? One of the tricks that Jacob and I learned is like if you lick that cartridge, a lot of times it would work better than blowing on it. And I don't know if it was because like the wetness on like the connecting things what like made the connection of the electrical better or whatever, but yeah, that was a trick that we learned that it actually worked.
I just had this your entire childhood flash before my eyes of you in your room and your mom knocking on the door. John, it's dinner time.
Just licking the cartridge.
You're like, what are you doing in there, Johnny? I just need a minute. You're like licking this cartridge. She bursts into the room. What are you doing? You're like, oh. She's licking this Super NES cartridge. Like, what are you doing?
See, but it was never Super Nintendo games never had that problem.
No, they didn't.
You think it was because it was top loaded?
Maybe it might have just been because it was like better material, you know.
But the Genesis, I don't remember that having. I figured it out. It was the side load of the NES.
Okay,
Because the Genesis was a top load too.
Well, la-di-da. I'm sorry that you know everything.
I wish
and
I
the
could
rest
go
of the
back.
world does not.
I wish I could go back and I would tip that Nintendo on its side.
Well, you know, I know this to be true. I'm almost sure they made an NES
A top loader. Yeah, they did.
They absolutely did.
Yep.
So I wonder if that one worked better. I wonder if that one was more reliable, and maybe we just didn't know it. Because I think that spring contraption that went in, maybe it just didn't. Like again, it had
Maybe
to connect a certain
down
way.
all
Yeah.
the way. Yeah, that's a good point.
I remember a game for Super Nintendo called Metal Warriors. I don't know if you remember it. It was kind of a little obscure game, but I recently, a cousin of mine sent me a picture. He's like, hey, do you remember this Metal Warriors game? He was in this like comic book store, video game store.
Okay, yeah.
And it was sitting there for like $400. They had a price tag on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Just the cartridge.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's ridiculous. I went on eBay. Yeah, $350 to $400 for these cartridges without the book, without there was a copy that sold for $2,000
Sealed still in the box.
just with the instructions
Oh,
and the
wow.
and I'm like, why
This
don't
was
I
one of
have
those
this?
cheap Nintendo
Why?
sleeves? Yeah.
Well, I think it was such an obscure game that it was just more rare. If it was Super Mario Brothers or something, they made so many copies. But I'm just like, sometimes like I wonder how much of those things are actually worth money. I have an old box of like the Disney clamshell VHS tapes,
yep.
and I think, well, those got to be worth something. And I'll look and they're worth nothing.
Yeah.
But the minute
then
I
you
give
see
them
these
away
posts-
is when it's going to go.
But then you see these posts online about how somebody sold like the Little Mermaid still in the original plastic for $10,000.
Well, I always look at the sold stuff. So, like that Metal Warriors are the sold listings.
Yeah.
Like people list things for like $1 billion for the world's largest French fry I found in my fast food, and it's like, But you got to look at the sold stuff, and it's just amazing. I don't know if you remember this game, but it's another pop culture reference to the food industry.
Okay.
So, can you think of any food industry regular Nintendo games?
Regular Nintendo games.
Regular Nintendo, NES, food related. And it's not Burger Time. It's like actual franchise food related video game.
Well, there was the one with the McDonald's characters.
No, that's not it. That's not what I'm thinking of.
Okay.
You got anything else?
No, you know what? You're gonna say it, and I'm gonna be like,
say Yo Noid.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
Do you remember the Domino's
Yes,
Noid?
yes. The
Like,
Noid.
They now they used
pushed
to have
him so hard. What do you think the Noid's doing now? Do you think he's like in a studio apartment in Las Vegas, like hoping that somebody finds him?
No, I think he's in an alley, like behind a dumpster. I don't think it's. I think he's licking an
With a
NES
needle in his
cartridge.
arm, yeah.
I really do. I think he's just slurping an NES cartridge
with his face on it.
Well, the thing about that is it also speaks to that game. First of all, was terrible. It made no it was a terrible game.
Well, there's so many games though that you like in concept you're like, geez, I'm so glad that they made this. Then you put it in, you're like, this is the worst game. Like, there was this X-Men game on NES that I was so excited to play because I was such a huge X-Men fan. And it's like the worst game ever.
Well, but the thing is, John, is the X-Men, even back in the day, I mean, now I think because of all the movies and stuff, there's a newfound popularity to it. Even in the day, it was popular. We literally took
the Noid.
The Noid was
you're
like
right. You're right. That's a great
the
point.
Domino's mascot made into a video game, and I
Yes.
think you collected gold coins, and the first level was flooding, and then you fought ninjas with a boomerang. Like what? Like at what point did they think they're sitting around the board table like, I think we need to make this to a video game because that new Nintendo thingamajig is pretty popular. Like, it was not even close to a good idea. Burger Time, at least, was a fun concept.
Absolutely, yeah.
But wow.
But the Noid, he probably wasn't even like a fully formed character from like a marketing standpoint.
No, what was he?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what was he?
He was annoyed.
He was annoyed.
How dare you?
Annoyed.
How dare you disparage Noids everywhere?
I'm so sorry. Well, like, with McDonald's, Ronald McDonald is a clown. And then there is, the Hamburglar, which is a burglar, of ham burgers.
Yeah.
But then what's the purple thing?
Oh, Grimace.
Grimace. What is this? Am I disparaging grimaces?
Yes.
Everywhere? And then, wait, there was... It's not Birdo, because Birdo...
It was like a bird-like
there's
character, though. Yes. And he's been forgotten.
Well, it was a she, I think.
Oh, she. Okay,
Yeah,
she's been forgotten. She's with the Noid in that alley.
Birdie.
Okay.
Was her name. I was thinking Birdo from
Mario. Yeah.
Now...
let's talk about that a little bit, though. Mario 2. Like, when that came out, I remember, like, with King Wart and stuff, and people were like, oh, okay, yeah, they introduced, like, a new villain. King Wart hasn't been seen since.
No.
I think Mario, he's in the same alley that Mario dumped the Noid in.
Well, now, here's the thing, John. Like, do you know the lore of Super Mario Brothers 2?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, tell me what you know.
If you refresh me on this, I'm like, yeah, I knew that. But, like, I've got so much, like, useless knowledge tied up in this brain that sometimes it's hard to download it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cliff Clavin. I'm so sorry. Yeah, Normie, I know too much about the video games there. Huh? You got this kind of...
I'm sorry.
Actually, Super Mario Brothers 2. So, if you ever played Super Mario Brothers All-Stars, there was included in there the Lost Levels.
Yes. Yep.
Lost Levels was actually Super Mario Brothers 2.
Okay.
And it was released in Japan, and they thought it was too hard for the mainstream American user, and so they, in the United States, released this version of Super Mario Brothers 2. It was a game called Doki Doki Panic.
Okay.
They took a game called Doki Doki Panic, and they replaced the avatars with Mario characters. Period.
Really?
That is it.
Okay.
It was literally an entirely separate game. Almost every element of that game is Doki Doki Panic. All they did was replace the characters.
And the Shy Guy has become a huge Mario character.
Yeah. No, but it was all made up.
Like the Shy Guys are like the one element of that game that has like permeated Mario mythology.
Yeah, I think
that's amazing.
Yeah, and it was.
Oh, and Birdo. I mean, Birdo's part of it too.
Yeah,
but
Birdo's been in there. But I mean, it's just so interesting how something on the drawing room floor ended up becoming something that. And Mario 2, in some ways, is one of the least popular of the first three Mario games. But it also kind of has a certain enduring quality. It was fun to play.
It's got a certain charm.
Yeah,
because of that. And, I gotta say, Super Mario Brothers 3 was great. I mean, you have to put. I think you have to put 2 above 1.
Oh, 2 above 1?
Yeah, I think you do because for original NES, I would rank it Super Mario Brothers 3, 2, and then 1.
I like 3. I think I like 1 more because it was more nostalgic.
There it is, right there. Yeah.
So I'm showing John you a photo.
Nuts.
It's the concept art, and they literally replaced the characters. So they had a princess character, and even the mechanics of the game. So even
the character on the right is like throwing a kabuki mask, and Mario's throwing a turnip.
Yeah. And I believe, and I might be wrong, but in Mario Brothers 1, Mario and Luigi, I believe, unless I'm totally incorrect, and I think I'm right, they are the same gameplay.
Yes.
So there's no differences. Yep. In Doki Doki Panic, the character that they changed into Luigi was already programmed to jump higher. And the princess was programmed to float.
Yep.
And those characteristics have followed through into future Mario games. Yeah. So the only reason that those characteristics really exist, Luigi jumping higher, is because they stole the concept from this other game. It's a crazy world.
What was the advantage of playing as Toad? Mario Brothers 2.
I believe Toad was faster.
Okay.
I believe, I think so. I believe he was faster.
And therefore could jump farther.
And the jumps, well, I don't know if it was jump farther. I think he actually took short, I think there was more controlled jumps almost.
Okay.
I'm not really sure. I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's kind of a, I think that, but at bare minimum, they had different attributes. And it's so interesting how those carried over. I mean, even down to the concept art on these games, they were like, we'll just change all this. But they left all the redeeming factors. I mean, Birdo was part of that. King Wart. I mean, all of those things were part of the original concept, and they just moved it over.
Doki Doki Panic. Yeah. What do you think Doki Doki is in Japanese?
I think I knew what it meant, but let me rack my brain. And by rack my brain, I will look it up on the internet. I'll find it, John.
Yeah, that's fascinating though. I mean, that's so incredible. And and we talked a little bit ago about like the value of old games and things like that. And the only game that I can think of that I have or I've owned that probably falls into that category of being worth something is a game. It's the only game that I ever ordered that was like an import game. And that was Nintendo 64 when I was a senior in high school. One of the movie stores in town got this game, and I fell in love with it to the point where I spent way more than I needed to. I was I saved up money for months just so that I could get this game, and it was imported from Japan, but it was an English translation. Harvest Moon 64.
I heard
it was sold out everywhere. You couldn't find it, and I was able to find it on some obscure video game website that had just gotten a couple of the English copies in, and it was back ordered. I had to wait for 3 or 4 months. It was my senior year of high school, and I remember when I got that game, staying up for 2 weeks straight till 3, 4 in the morning playing this game. Yeah. And it wasn't even that intricate. It was like a life simulator, like a farm simulator game where you're physically weeding these plots of dirt and you're planting it, and then you run out of time in the day, so you have to. And then there was a relationship element where you could convince 3 girls to fall in love with you, and then you could marry them, and then you'd raise your child and stuff. And it consumed my life for 2 or 3 weeks of my senior year, to the point where I was getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night.
But my question, in these games you were picking weeds, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was parts you're picking weeds. Did you have more fun picking weeds in that game than you did in real life?
Yes.
Did you have more fun wooing 3 girls than you had being married?
No.
I'm trying to trap you. I'm trying to trap you. John, according to the internets, I can't leave the world hanging here. Doki Doki is actually, again, according to the internets, because everything is true, is actually onomatopoeia. It's actually the sound of a heart beating at a quickie pace, like Doki Doki, Doki Doki, Doki Doki.
Doki Doki Panic.
Panic. Yeah, so it's a fast pace. So I mean that's
Can't slow down, or King Ward's going to take over the world.
King Ward and Birdo and all.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
How do you feel about the fact that you were left out of that game when your brothers were included? Just to bring this whole conversation.
Oh, it comes full circle. You know, here's the thing.
Or are you Toad?
Am I Toad? No, I'm actually going to reveal myself. I'm going to be another character entirely. All of a sudden, you know, like the princess is going to take off a mask and it's going to be like, "Ha, I'm Jario." Hey. You know, it's going to be something. It's going to be a reveal at one of the end of the games. I want to spoil it though.
That's going to be how Nintendo embraces transgender.
John, it's always a pleasure sharing the air with you. I'm so glad that we had this discussion. And I think we should go play some Doki Doki Panic.
I agree.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to Pop Culture Problems. We'll see you next time.